Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 241. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you guys had a great weekend. We're going to pick up where we left off in the last podcast. I have a lot of information to share with you guys today. I want to start with a post that former President Donald Trump put out on his Truth Social account this morning, and he's criticizing the ABC Disney network. They're supposed to host this debate that's coming up in September on the 10th, and now there's some question if there's even going to be a debate. Kamala Harris, it's interesting that this debate was part of the 3 debates that Trump agreed to do with President Joe Biden. But after President Joe Biden dropped out, Kamala Harris wanted to hold Donald Trump to the agreement that he had made with Joe Biden. Joe Biden, again, being senile, being a vegetable. Of course, Trump agreed to all of his rules, everything that Joe Biden wanted. They have the first debate. Trump knocks Joe Biden out. Kamala Harris replaces Joe Biden, and now she's trying to change the rules. Kamala Harris does not want to debate Trump. But he put this post out. I watched ABC Fake News this morning, both lightweight reporter Jonathan Karl, and this is how you know Trump does his own truth posts or tweets, because Jonathan Karl, and then with the K, because he does spell it with the K with the question mark, ridiculous and biased interview of Tom Cotton, who was fantastic. And Tom Cotton, I have a clip I'm going to show you. Tom Cotton was fantastic. Tom Cotton cooked hot Karl, just cooked him. And he gives you a lesson. If you watch what Tom Cotton does, Tom Cotton is excellent with the media. So Donald Trump is talking about this interview with Tom Cotton and Hot Karl from the show yesterday. I'm going to show you a clip from that. And their so-called panel of Trump haters, they were all Trump haters, pretty much, except Reince Priebus, I think, was on that panel. Why would I do a debate against Kamala Harris on that network? That's an excellent question. President Trump, you do not need to go to Disney and do this debate. I think you should scrap this debate, especially when she refused to accept the Fox debate. So now she's trying to change the rules. Trump is questioning everything that I just said, that why did Harris turn down the Fox, NBC, or CBS debate, or even CNN? Stay tuned, is what he says. So now we have some controversy. We don't even know if we're going to have the debate yet. Take a listen to this clip of Jim Acosta.
Fresh drama in the 2024 presidential race is raising questions over whether Donald Trump and Kamala Harris will actually debate next month. 2 campaigns are at a stalemate, we are told, over the rules. Sources tell CNN that Trump's team wants microphones muted when a candidate is not speaking, but the Harris campaign wants the mics left on. And Trump posted scathing remarks about ABC and some of its journalists over the weekend, asking, quote, why would I do the debate against Kamala Harris on that network?
Why would you go to Disney and do that? I mean, I don't understand why you did it on CNN either, but especially on Disney when the head of ABC Disney is one of Kamala Harris's best friends. This is an absolute setup. I don't believe Donald Trump should show up at all. Let's listen to Megyn Kelly here. She breaks it down a little bit better.
There are reports everywhere today about this presidential debate scheduled for September 10th on ABC. Now, this was scheduled between Trump and Biden, and the terms were agreed to between Trump and Biden. And they had apparently all the same rules as the CNN debate between Trump and Biden, where the mics were supposed to be cut. There wasn't supposed to be a studio audience.
So all these rules, when they made this agreement to have this debate, I think in May or early June, the debate was in June. So I think they made the agreement in May. But when they made this agreement, everything was on Joe Biden's terms, cutting off the mic. So Trump doesn't talk over Biden and confuse his senile mind, or Joe Biden getting confused by the audience and it triggering his senility. All these rules were agreed to by Trump because he was debating a vegetable, so the rules didn't really matter. And these rules were on Biden's terms. He's the one who wanted no audience. He's the one who wanted the mics shut off. So I think that's very interesting. And now that Kamala Harris is saying that she wants to hold Donald Trump to the debate schedule that he made with Joe Biden, but I want to change the rules. Well, what do you mean you're going to hold me to the debate schedule, but change the rules? Do you want to debate or not? And she obviously doesn't.
Notes allowed, no opening or closing statements. And when Harris subbed in as the nominee, there was some back and forth about whether they should renegotiate, and maybe go to Fox, maybe not go to ABC. No, Team Harris wanted it as is. Leave it in place. You already agreed, they kept telling him. And Trump was like, okay, I'll do it. And then you should also do one at Fox. And she, on the night, I think it was of her debate, it was on a newsy night, she just put out a paper statement saying, we won't be doing the Fox debate. I think it might have been Monday night when Biden spoke. Anyway, so she won't do anything on territory she considers even neutral. She will only go to places like ABC, where her best friend is the person in charge. So now she's gone back on the ABC debate to say, and I want to change the rules. Now I want open mics while the other person is speaking.
So why do you think Kamala Harris's team wants open mics while the other person is speaking? Why does she want to change that rule, people? Because she wants to do her little zingers game and where Trump tries to speak and she can say, oh, I'm speaking now, don't interrupt me and do all that stuff. So that's part of the game. And then she wants to have notes too, where she can have all her little zingers down on notes. She's not even smart enough to remember them. What's going on with this campaign? She said that she was going to do an interview, a sit down one-on-one interview before the end of the month. Today's the 26th. You have 5 days. Are you going to do the interview or not? This is the most closed off campaign for the president of the United States that I have ever seen. And she does not want to debate. Listen, people, when you go through a primary and you're challenged on your policies through a primary, and you have to defend your policies, and you sit down with interviews with the media, and the media is challenging you on your policies, it helps you fine tune your policy. It helps you fine tune your message. She has done none of that. She hasn't been challenged on her policies. Nobody even knows what her policies are. I don't know how the heck Trump is supposed to debate her when she won't even say what her policies are. But that's the back and forth that Tom Cotton got into with Hot Carl yesterday about, as far as we know, the policies that she ran on in 2020 are her policies, because we haven't heard anything else from her. We've heard from her surrogates and everything, but we don't even know from her own mouth what her policies are. The last time we heard her policies from her own mouth was when she ran in 2020, when you had an opportunity to challenge those policies. Now she's spouting off a lot of policies now, but if you have questions about those policies, how do you get those questions answered? She's not answering any questions about the details of her policy, but take a look at this clip of Tom Cotton and Hot Carl.
President Trump has been campaigning hard and vigorously now for months. Obviously, that's going to increase in its pace as we get closer to the election. And President Trump is going to draw a sharp contrast with Kamala Harris, who has supported things like decriminalizing illegal immigration, or giving taxpayer-funded health insurance to illegal aliens, or taking away health insurance on the job for 170 million Americans, banning gas cars, confiscating firearms.
These are all positions. What do you mean taking away health insurance? What are you talking about?
She said when she ran for president that she wants to eliminate private health insurance on the job for 170 million Americans, John.
Yeah, that is not her position now.
How do you know that's not her position?
How do you know that's not her position now? Look at Hot Carl. Hot Carl tries to defend her and say, well, those aren't her positions now. How do you know that? Carl? How do you know those are not her positions now? That's what she ran on in 2020. That's the last time we heard her policies from her mouth is in 2020. If she's changed her policies, I mean, how do you know? Have you interviewed her? Has anybody from your network interviewed her? Has anyone from any network interviewed her? How do you know that her policies have changed from the platform she ran on in 2020?
Increase in its pace as we get closer to the election. And President Trump is going to draw a sharp contrast with Kamala Harris, who has supported things like decriminalizing illegal immigration or giving taxpayer-funded health insurance to illegal aliens or
Tom
taking away
cooking, bro.
health insurance on the job for 170 million Americans, banning gas cars, confiscating firearms. These are all
what do you
positions
mean
that-
taking away health insurance? What are you talking about?
She said when she ran for president that she wants to eliminate private health insurance on the
Except
job.
for illegals, she wants to have Medicare for all. That's what she ran on in 2020 as well. She wants Medicare for all, including illegals.
Cars, confiscating firearms. These are all
what do you
positions
mean
that-
taking away health insurance? What are you talking about?
She said when she ran for president that she wants to eliminate private health insurance on the job.
Medicare for all.
Million Americans, John.
Yeah, I mean that is not her position now. She
How do you know that's not her position? How do you know that's not her position?
I mean, she says she no
She has
longer
not said that.
supports
She has not said
Medicare
that.
for all.
She has not said that. Maybe anonymous aides on a Friday night have said that, but the last thing that she said
But
on
this
most
was
of
not
these
a
topics-
radical convention. I mean, she.
But I said, look at it. He's trying to change the subject. This was not a radical convention. Those were the policies, Hot Carl. Those were the policies that she ran on in 2020. She has not stated anything different. She has not sat down and then, I mean, Tom Cotton says it perfectly here.
Bernie Sanders. She is not taking the positions of the far left of her party. She's clearly making an effort to move to the middle.
I did hear what you said to Senator Sanders, and I thought it was clear that he's very disappointed that she's taking these efforts not to change her positions, but to hide her positions, John. The American people are totally justified to conclude that Kamala Harris is a dangerous San Francisco liberal based on what she campaigned on the last time she ran for
2020.
president and what this administration has done for the last 4 years. Again, you would have thought watching the Democratic convention last week that the Democrats are not in office, that they're not in power. That
Exactly.
They're campaigning against an incumbent Republican.
Exactly.
When in reality, she's been part of the failures of the Biden-Harris administration for 4 years. And when she campaigned for president in her own right, she did in fact promise things like decriminalizing illegal immigration and taking away health insurance.
But that's
on
his
the job.
position she's clearly changed on, and
No,
she
she
has said
hasn't.
she has changed.
She's
Yes.
clearly changed on. What do you mean that she's clearly changed on that? How clear is that to you? I mean, it's not clear to me. What gives you the idea that she's clearly changed her entire platform that she ran on in 2020? You're defending her.
Taking away health
But
insurance
that's
on
his
the job.
position she's clearly changed on, and
No,
she
she
has said
hasn't.
she has changed. Yes,
No,
she has.
No, she has not. John, she has not said that. She's not. You pointed out, Senator Sanders, repeatedly things that her campaign has said.
Tom Cotton,
Anonymous aides
cooking.
Speaking on background to reporters has said, well, she no longer believes these things. Okay, maybe she has changed her position on things like taking away your health insurance and confiscating your gun. If she has changed her position, she owes it to the American people to come out and say in her own words when she changed and why she changed. That's one reason why she needs to address the American people and speak to these questions.
She needs to do an interview. She needs to do press conferences. She needs to explain if she's changed from 4 years ago when she ran 4 years ago in 2020, all these dramatic changes in her policy. If she has made the changes that you claim, Hot Carl, then why won't she sit down with the media or do a press conference and explain what was the reason for her change? What was when did this change take place? How did you come to this evolution and this change? She needs to explain herself, and the media is defending her right now, just like Jonathan Karl is doing here. But Tom Cotton is absolutely right that she has not stated anything different from what she ran on in 2020, the failed campaign when she had to drop out of the primary without winning a single delegate on that platform. If that's the reason that you changed the platform because it's a losing platform and you have to drop out before the Iowa caucuses in 2020, then come out and say that. Well, the reason that I changed is because it's a losing platform. But she hasn't changed. She's only hiding her platform. And if she has changed, then she needs to sit down with the media and explain why. But she's afraid to do that. She's afraid to debate. And this campaign is a scam. So going back to what we were talking about in the last podcast, we were talking about the 24 years of these guys compared to the 4 years of this guy. And what they're telling you is that the 24 years of this guy, of these guys don't matter. That all of your problems that you're experiencing in the United States of America right now because of the 4 years of this guy. This is another, even if you want to include, again, the father, then we're talking about 28 years. This is 28 years compared to 4 years here. 4 years, 28 years. And again, all of these men are related. That this man is the father of this man. He's the adopted father of this man. But even this guy, Jimmy Carter, George W. Bush, Barack Hussein Obama, and George H.W. Bush all share a common ancestor that settled in America in the Plymouth colony. All of them. And Bill Clinton, again, is George H.W. Bush's adopted son. He's the father figure, is what we talked about in the last podcast. Hold on. I'm going to get down and show you this picture right here, because we were talking about in the last podcast about George H.W. Bush being in front of the book depository there in Daley Plaza on November 22nd, 1963, the day that John F. Kennedy was assassinated in front of the world. I want you to notice this picture of this guy, George H.W. Bush, standing in front of the book depository, and this part, the way that this part in his hair goes over to the left. This is George H.W. Bush as president in the Oval Office. You see this same part in his hair, and that his hair waves over to his right, not the left. I'm sorry, to his right. You can see that the part and the hair goes over to the right. You look at the elder George Bush here, just before he leaves this earth, and you can see the same part with the hair going over to the right. So this is indeed George H.W. Bush of the CIA. I don't know if this is the memo from J. Edgar Hoover, but J. Edgar Hoover wrote a memo. Now, this is not the J. Edgar Hoover memo. This is a different document that states George W. Bush, unless this is I don't know, but J. Edgar Hoover wrote a memo on November 22nd, 1963, naming George H.W. Bush as a member of the CIA at this time. Even this document here, you can see that it talks about the Zapata offshore drilling. This is how George Bush ended up in Texas, because after he graduated from Yale, he went down to Texas and opened this Zapata offshore drilling, and they would take rigs out, oil rigs out into the Gulf of Mexico and spy on Cuba. They were running the Cubans back and forth through the Zapata offshore drilling company. So he was working for the CIA immediately out of college, but it wasn't widely known until Gerald Ford, who was on the Warren Commission after Richard Nixon resigns. Gerald Ford becomes president and then makes George H.W. Bush the DCI, Director of Central Intelligence. But he was in Central Intelligence in 1963. There he is in front of Daley Plaza when John F. Kennedy is being killed. So this group here, this family here represents, again, 24 years, 28 years, if you count the father, 28 years of United States governance. These 4 men. But they're telling you that all your problems is because of this guy in his 4 years. But I want to talk about the 28 years of these guys, particularly the 24 years of these 3. Bill Clinton in succession, Bill Clinton, 8 years, George W. Bush, 8 years, Barack Hussein Obama, 8 years, 24 years. And the thing about these guys, so I want to show you a little bit of this clip, some pictures of, this is George W. Bush kissing Hillary Clinton. I think this is at Barack Obama's inauguration. This is George W. Bush hugged up with Hillary Clinton again. Okay. Show you some more. This is Michelle Obama hugged up with George Bush. It's a family, people. That's what I'm telling you. So it's a one big family. I'll explain to you what these guys did to you, people. Because it's not. Your problems are not because this is George Bush hugging his cousin, Barack Obama. I think this is during his inauguration when he's handing it off to him. Bill Clinton, George Bush. So it's a big family is what we're dealing with here. And these guys are responsible for your problems. And they wanted to keep the con going. I mean, like I said, this little family here represents 28 years, but they wanted 32 years or even longer. They wanted to keep this family, what do you call it? Dynasty. They wanted to keep this dynasty going a little bit longer, but this guy got in the way. This guy got in the way of their little dynasty. They're talking about this year in this election being the first election since 1976, the first presidential election since 1976 that doesn't have a Bush, a Clinton, an Obama, or a Biden on the ticket. Think about that, people. Think about that. You're talking about a period of, what is it? That would be 50-something years. 50-something years where you don't have, this is the first election where you don't have a Clinton, a Bush, an Obama, or Biden on the ticket. And they wanted to keep this dynasty going in 2016 when Trump got in the way. Trump got in the way first because they had, like I was telling you, the establishment, they hedged their bets. They don't care anything about Democrats or Republicans and red and blue. They'll support both candidates because they hedge their bets and they have an establishment candidate, no matter if he's a Republican candidate or a Democrat candidate. And in 2016, they were trying to keep this dynasty going with this guy's brother, Jeb Bush, running for the Republican nomination, and then this guy's wife, Hillary Clinton, running for the Democrat nomination. And then this guy came out of nowhere and ruined all their plans. First, he got rid of this guy's brother in the primary, and he does it in a very effective way. If you remember the Republican primary in 2016, Donald Trump comes in second place in Iowa, and then he wins New Hampshire, and then he goes into South Carolina, and South Carolina is always the place where if you pick up momentum in those first two primaries and the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary, South Carolina is always the place where you put up the stop. That if you got a candidate that's coming out early and he's catching fire early, then we make sure that he doesn't get any further than South Carolina. This happened in 2000 when John McCain won Iowa, he won New Hampshire, and then this guy and Karl Rove right here in South Carolina pulled off one of the dirtiest campaigns that I have seen in American history. And I've studied many, many campaigns going back to the 1800s. American political campaigns, and the campaign and what happened in South Carolina to John McCain. When John McCain later in 2000 comes out and endorses George Bush after what George Bush and Karl Rove did to him in South Carolina, and McCain came out and endorsed him after that, I was blown away. I couldn't believe the things they did, the lies they told about his wife, the lies they told about his family. John McCain has an adoptive daughter who's a black daughter, and George Bush and Karl Rove, they spread rumors using robocalls saying that John McCain had fathered his adoptive daughter through wedlock. They made all these lies that Cindy McCain was a drug addict and an alcoholic and all this. I mean, the dirtiest but they stopped John McCain's momentum in South Carolina. It's the way it always worked. Happened the same thing in 2020 with Joe Biden. Joe Biden loses the first two primaries. South Carolina, this guy calls and tells Pete Buttigieg, tells Amy Klobuchar, tells everybody to drop out to clear the way for Joe Biden. Senator Clownburn endorses Joe Biden, and then Joe Biden wins South Carolina and then stops Bernie Sanders' momentum in South Carolina, and then the rest is history. So that's what they had planned for Trump in the 2016 primary. Donald Trump came in second place in Iowa. He won New Hampshire. So they were going to put up the stops on Donald Trump in South Carolina. And the way they were going to do it is, because Donald Trump's running as a Republican, the way they were going to do it is they were going to force Donald Trump to either criticize this guy right here, George W. Bush, criticize him, and then it was going to show that he wasn't loyal to the Republican Party, and then Jeb Bush was going to win the South Carolina primary, and the rest. I mean, they were going to play the same game that will end your momentum in South Carolina. South Carolina is when it ends, but that's not what happened in South Carolina. This is what happened in South Carolina, and this is why there is so much bad blood and so much contempt, not only with the Bush family, with this entire family, this family right here, and others. Many others, but that's where the rift came from, is because they wanted to keep their dynasty going, and Donald Trump wrecked their dynasty first with Jeb Bush, and then after he gets rid of Jeb Bush, he's going to take on Hillary in 2016. But this is how he gets rid of Jeb Bush. This was a trap that they were trying to set in South Carolina in the debate in 2016. Take a listen.
On Monday, George W. Bush will campaign in South Carolina for his brother. As you said tonight, and you've often said, the Iraq War and your opposition to it was a sign of your good judgment. In 2008, in an interview with Wolf Blitzer talking about President George W. Bush's conduct of the war, you said you were surprised that Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi didn't try to impeach him. You said, quote, which personally I think would have been a wonderful thing, close quote. When you were asked what you meant by that, you said, for the war. For the war. He lied. He got us into the war with lies. Do you still believe President Bush should have been impeached?
First of all, I have to say, as a businessman, I get along with everybody. I have business all over the world. I know so many of the people in the audience. And by the way, I'm a self-funder. I have my wife and I have my son. That's all I have. I don't have this. So let me just tell you, I get along with everybody, which is my obligation to my company, to myself, etc. Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake, all right? Now, you can take it any way you want, and it took Jeb Bush, if you remember at the beginning of his announcement, when he announced for president, it took him 5 days. He went back. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It took him 5 days before his people told him what to say, and he ultimately said it was a mistake. The war in Iraq, we spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives.
It wasn't a mistake.
We don't even have it. Iran
and we spent $5 trillion
Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. obviously it was a mistake.
It wasn't a mistake.
George Bush made a mistake.
It wasn't a mistake.
Mistakes, but that one was a beauty. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East.
But so you still think he should be impeached?
I think it's my turn, isn't it?
You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you, they lied.
Now that's
they said
the truth.
There were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none.
That's the truth. Now, at first he says they made a mistake, but that wasn't true. They didn't make a mistake. And then he says they lied. Now, that's the truth. They lied. They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were no weapons of mass destruction. But for a Republican candidate for president of the United States to come out on a debate stage and say this in 2016 was huge. It was huge. Let's listen to a little bit more of this.
You do whatever you want. You call it whatever you want. I want to tell you.
He destroys Jeb.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
All right. Governor Bush.
Listen to the boos. Boo.
Brother gets attacked.
I got about 5 or 6. Do I get to do it 5 or 6 times or just once responding to that? So here's the deal. I'm sick and tired of Barack Obama blaming my brother for all of the
Barack Obama didn't blame your brother. Donald Trump just did, buddy. Bringing in your cousin Barack Obama. This ain't about your cousin.
And frankly, I could care less about the insults that Donald Trump gives to me. It's blood sport for him. He enjoys it, and I'm glad he's happy about it. But I am sick and tired of him going after my family. My dad is the greatest man alive in my mind.
Your dad.
And while Donald Trump was building a reality TV show, my brother was building a security apparatus to keep us safe, and I'm proud of what he did. And he's had the gall to go after my mother.
The World Trade Center came down during your brother's reign.
Remember
that.
Hold on.
Let me finish this. He's had the gall to go after my mother.
That's not keeping us
won
safe.
The lottery.
I mean, that's just crazy. The World Trade Center came down under your brother's watch, or in your brother's reign. He didn't say watch, under your brother's reign. The World Trade Center came down under your brother's reign. That's not keeping us safe, Jeb. I mean, I've said this before. If you haven't followed my podcast and haven't heard me say this debate on this night is when I decided to be a Trump supporter, and I've been a Trump supporter ever since. I mean, I was blown away by the performance of Trump in this debate, and he wins. He ends up winning South Carolina, and from then on, after he won South Carolina, I mean, the rest is history. I mean, there was no one to stand in his way. I mean, he had destroyed Jeb Bush, and then, you know, Ted Cruz was the last one to challenge him in that primary. So he ends up winning the nomination. And so he defeats this guy's brother, and then he goes on to the general election, and then he's facing this guy's wife. So I want to talk about now why there is Kamala Harris put this thing out today. August 26, 2024. Harris walls, immediate release. More than 200 Bush, McCain, and Romney alumni endorse Vice President Kamala Harris. And key points. This is a release from the Kamala Harris campaign. They are boasting about the fact that they have all of these, what I call Rockefeller Republicans, that are endorsing them. And these are people from the Republican Party that feel like they don't have a political home anymore, because like I was explaining in the last podcast, that in 2016, when Donald Trump, basically puts a roadblock in front of this dynasty and don't allow them to continue this dynasty for another 4 years, when he does that, he basically takes over the Republican Party. He is a kind of like a third party, an outsider who takes over the Republican Party. So you have two factions of the Republican Party. You have what I call the they're commonly known as the neoconservatives, neocon Republicans, which I call the Rockefeller Republicans because they, that's who they really are. If you understand the term, that's what they went by. They were northeastern elite Republicans that go back to John D. Rockefeller. This guy right here, he lives in Texas now, and he was the governor of Texas, and he tries to act like he's Texan, but he was born in Connecticut. Okay, because his grandfather was a senator of Connecticut. Connecticut is like a suburb of New York. And his grandfather was not only a senator, Connecticut senator, he worked for a very big and old and very powerful banking firm in New York. So he was basically a New Yorker, this guy's grandfather. He was born in Connecticut. His father was born in Connecticut. The only one of the Bush family that was born in Texas and not born in Connecticut is Jeb. So these guys are northeastern elite Republicans, Rockefeller Republicans, neoconservative Republicans, whatever you want to call them. That's one faction in the Republican Party. And then you have the MAGA faction, and the MAGA faction was challenging the establishment in the Republican Party, which is these Rockefeller Republicans. Even in Joe Biden's speech last Monday in the DNC, he talked about the America First doctrine. He was talking about it like it was a bad thing, but that was the first time I'd heard anyone use the term the America First doctrine. And I love the sound of that, the American First doctrine. That's the doctrine that I love. But so that's what a MAGA is. Make America Great Again is different from the Bush doctrine or the Obama doctrine. No, we have the America First doctrine is what Donald Trump was championing. So the MAGA movement took over the Republican Party from these Rockefeller neoconservative Republicans and like rats fleeing from a sinking ship, or I don't want to say a sinking ship because the ship's not sinking, but the Rockefeller Republicans, neoconservative Republicans, they escaped from the Republican Party, or they've been ousted from the Republican Party, and they've gone and they've joined up with the Democrats because they want their party back, is essentially what they says. They had all these Republicans speaking at the DNC and endorsing Kamala Harris, but of course, I mean, these people's their party has been taken over. This was one of the Republicans that spoke at the DNC. This is the former Lieutenant Governor of Georgia, Jeff Duncan. And this is the Zoom call because they've got this little group that they set up. Adam Kinzinger is part of the group. Again, he's part of that Republican, neoconservative Rockefeller Republican group. Again, he was the only one who sat on the January 6th committee with who? With Dick Cheney's daughter. Dick Cheney's daughter, because Dick Cheney's in this same group with his former boss and who was also good friends with George H.W. Bush. They both served in the Gerald Ford administration, Dick Cheney and George H.W. Bush. So they're all part of the same group, the Rockefeller Republicans. And that's why Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney were the only two Republicans from the House of Representatives to sit on the January 6th committee because they're part of that Rockefeller Republican, neoconservative Republican group that was ousted by the MAGA Republicans. Where's this clip? I want to show you this picture of Adam Kinzinger. So it's Adam Kinzinger and his boy, George H.W. Bush. So they're all in the same group. This is all the same group of people. And so are all of these 200 Republicans that are from Bush, McCain, and Romney alum. I mean, just think about these Republicans: Bush, McCain, Romney. Bush, McCain, Romney. These in succession. These are the three Republican nominees for president before Donald Trump got the nomination in 2016. These are the three in succession Republican nominees for president. Now, Bush won in 2004. Democrats accused him of cheating. They contested the election in 2004. Then in 2008, McCain lost. And then in 2012, Romney lost. And then 2016, Trump won. It says right here, we unite. We reunite today, joined by new George H.W. Bush alumni to reinforce our 2020 statement and for the first time jointly declare that we are voting for Vice President Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, the George H.W. Bush alumni. So these are the Rockefeller Republicans, neoconservative Republicans that have been kicked out of the Republican Party. They're no longer welcome at the Republican Party. Their party has been taken over, and they're angry. You can listen to Jeff Duncan say this here. This is their Zoom call because they have this little group called Republicans for Harris, and they did a Zoom call. And all of them, what you're getting ready to listen to Jeff Duncan say here is what pretty much all of them say in this Zoom call is that we want our party back. You know, we don't care that Kamala Harris is a communist. We don't care, about the dangerous policies that she's going to enact here in the United States. We have to put all of that aside because we want our party back. This guy even says it's selfish.
Look, I just want my party back. Right? Selfishly speaking, I'm supporting Kamala Harris because I think she's a steadier hand than Donald Trump will ever be. I think it will create an opportunity for us to have 4 years to heal and rebuild this party. I feel so strongly about it. I've even written a book. Many of you all have seen this. Nearly 4 years ago, I wrote this book, GOP 2.0.
So he spoke at the DNC, this guy, and he represents a lot of Republicans that are upset that their party was taken over and they want their party back. But why was your party taken over, buddy? Why was your party taken over? What did the Bush, McCain, and Romney wing of the party that preceded Donald Trump, what did they do to make their party vulnerable to be taken over? Well, first of all, they lost. John McCain lost. Romney lost. Losing, that does a lot to change your party. That's why they want Donald Trump to lose, because Duncan is saying here, we don't care if Kamala Harris wins. That'll give us 4 years to regroup, and then we can come and take the party back over from the MAGA faction. The Rockefeller Republicans, the neoconservative Republicans, they want to take the party back over from the MAGA faction, so they can only do that if the MAGA faction loses. So they've joined with the Democrats, all of these Republicans, to take over to defeat the MAGA faction so they can come and take the party back over again. It's time for George W. Bush to publicly endorse Kamala Harris. Again, back to the last podcast, there was some speculation that George W. Bush would come out and the DNC and endorse Kamala Harris, and that wouldn't have supported anyone. It wouldn't have surprised anyone because, again, you had all of these other Republicans speaking there, all of these Republicans that are joining Kamala Harris. They don't know anything. None of her economic policies are conservative. There's nothing conservative about her platform at all. There's nothing conservative about her. But just because you're mad that your party got taken over, then you've joined two people that are the most radical left-wing ticket that we've ever seen. That shows how committed you guys are to your conservative credentials, that you would join someone like Kamala Harris because you want your party back. We want our party back. Well, why is your party, again, why was the Republican Party ripe to be picked off by Donald Trump in 2016? Why was it in a position that Donald Trump could even take it over? What was going on with the Republican Party? Well, after Romney lost in 2012, I don't know if you guys remember this, the year after Romney lost in 2013, the GOP, under the leadership of Reince Priebus, put out what was called the autopsy report. And the autopsy, you only do autopsies on things that are dead. You don't do autopsies on things that are living. So for them to call this report that they put out after Mitt Romney's loss in 2012, the autopsy report, that means that they believed that the party was dead. The party was in the dustbin when Donald Trump picked it out of the dustbin and gave the party life again. And that's the funny thing about all of these, clown Republicans that are talking about, oh, we just want our party back. We want to get back to the days of Bush and the days of McCain and the days of Romney. Well, that was a loser party. When George Bush left office in 2008, he had a 28% approval rating. John McCain lost. Romney lost. This is a loser. You want to go back to the loser party? Is what you're telling me? Is that's what you want to do? You want to go back to this? Take a listen to this clip about the autopsy report.
When President Obama was reelected, the Republican Party put together an autopsy examining how the GOP needed to diversify its support. Well, that report is virtually unrecognizable under President Donald Trump. In many ways,
Absolutely.
He did the opposite of what was recommended.
And won.
As Trump seeks re-election, NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben called up some of the people who wrote that plan to see what they think of the party's future.
All right, so Donald Trump won, and that's how he took the party over, because he won on a platform that was different from the failed policies of these clowns, of Mitt Romney, Paul Ryan, the Bushes, the Kinzingers, the McCains, the Cheneys, all those clowns. The reason that you got your party taken over because you people are clowns and you are losers. And Donald Trump took the party out of the dustbin and he gave the party life again. And now all of these people like Duncan are like, oh, we just want our party back. We just want to go back to the failed policies, to the clown show of Bush, of McCain and Romney. So back to 2016, Donald Trump defeats this guy's brother in the primary and wins the nomination. So he's going to take on this guy's wife in the general election. But going back to what we were talking about in the last podcast, on the left side of the aisle in the Democratic Party, there was a populist movement that was trying to unseat his wife. So his wife couldn't get the nomination. And that progressive populist movement was being led by Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was going around challenging Hillary Clinton from her left for the nomination. He was completely cheated. They used superdelegates to give her more delegates and to rig the primary for him. There was even when WikiLeaks came out with the emails about the DNC rigging the primary for Hillary Clinton and not allowing Bernie Sanders to have a free shot at the primary. Even Debbie Wasserman Schultz had to step down from the DNC before the convention that year in Philadelphia, and all of the Bernie Sanders supporters, this progressive populist movement in the Democratic Party, which was trying to take over the Democratic Party the way the MAGA movement had taken over the Republican Party. They were upset at the convention in Philadelphia. There was all of this controversy where Bernie Sanders delegates were walking out. There was, they were hugely fractured. Bernie Sanders ends up endorsing Hillary Clinton after he's cheated the way that he's cheated. I mean, completely selling his supporters down the river. But many of his supporters very what's the word I'm trying to say? Interestly. I don't know if interestly is a word, but interesting. Very interesting. Very interestingly, that's the word I was looking for. Very interestingly, many Bernie Sanders supporters, after he was cheated and endorsed Hillary Clinton, they said that they were going to vote for Donald Trump. They said that they saw even though they were on the left wing, they said that they saw more connection to Donald Trump's campaign, because it was, even though it was a right-wing populist campaign that had taken over the Republican Party from the Republican establishment, these left-wing populists that were Bernie Sanders supporters after Bernie Sanders is cheated, a lot of them says that even though we don't see eye to eye, and this gets back to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Donald Trump joining forces, that we don't see eye to eye on everything, and a lot of things that we're completely opposite on. But in the fight against the establishment, the political establishment, to beat this dynasty, then some of the Bernie Sanders supporters saying that now that our populist candidate is cheated, we're going to join to help Trump defeat this dynasty. And I want you to listen to this clip about some of the Bernie Sanders supporters. This is outside of the convention in Philadelphia in 2016.
Today we're in Philadelphia at the DNC talking to angry Bernie protesters about whether or not they're going to be voting for Hillary in November or switching parties to vote for Donald Trump. Let's see what they have to say.
I was strong for Bernie, and now I'm taking the stand for Trump.
Okay.
I'm going to use all of my time and energy to make sure Hillary doesn't win after the convention.
So in a swing state, you consider Trump?
Yes.
And do you think other Bernie supporters in swing states will consider voting for Trump to deny Hillary office?
I know they will. I know a lot of them, and they already said they will.
Had to vote for a Trump or Hillary, I'd pick Trump.
You say that you would possibly consider voting for Trump if the race were close. Do you think other Bernie supporters would do that?
Absolutely. You guys need to know.
It wouldn't be surprising to you to see a big chunk of the Bernie people go to Trump?
No. And no, it wouldn't. And I have many intelligent peers within this movement who have said the same thing.
Some people that maybe Bernie is the person that they stuck with right now, but there are some things just anti-establishment, and they'll go with Trump.
Anti-establishment. They're just anti-establishment, and they'll go to Trump. That they want, they'll vote with Trump, even though they don't agree with him on everything, so they can end this dynasty in the establishment. And I implore you guys that are on the left that don't agree with Trump on everything. If you go back and listen to what Robert F. Kennedy said in his speech last week, we have to join together to defeat the political establishment. We can separate. Like if you can help us beat this Democratic Party right now and send the Democratic Party to the dustbin, then you can come back later. The progressives, these Bernie Sanders supporters, the people that don't see, the Democratic establishment that Kamala Harris is definitely a part of, that doesn't see that representing you, join us. Help us defeat that Democratic establishment, and then you can rebuild the Republican Party or the Democratic Party because it'll be in the ashes and it'll be pieces on the ground, and then you can take those pieces and you can rebuild the Democratic Party that you want. But if you are a progressive, populist-minded Democrat and you vote for the Democratic establishment and help the Democratic establishment defeat this populist movement in the Republican Party, where these neocon Rockefeller Republicans can take the Republican Party back over, you're not helping either populist movement. You're basically helping the establishment, because the Republican establishment and the Democratic establishment, they're all voting for Kamala Harris. They're all supporting Kamala Harris in 2024. Kamala Harris is the establishment candidate, and she's trying to paint herself like she's the change candidate. That's what she's trying to do, which I think is very interesting, that she's trying to paint herself as the change candidate. And I told you that this is what they're trying to run, the same campaign that Obama ran in 2008, except Obama was running against his cousin, who was the incumbent in 2008. So he was running, which 2008 was a change election, just like this election this year is a change election. So Barack Obama was running against his cousin, who was a Republican, who was the incumbent, so change the incumbent. But Kamala Harris, and what she's trying to do, she's the incumbent right now, and she's trying to run the Obama play and say that she's the change candidate. You're going to change to you, from you, is what you're trying to do. Change to you, from you. But that's the narrative that she's presenting, is that she is the change candidate. That she's the change candidate. I don't have very much time left. I wanted to get back into her economic policies. We'll probably pick that back up in the next podcast. But I want you to listen to this reporter that was on Meet the Press yesterday talk about how Kamala Harris is the change candidate.
I think the most impressive thing about where Kamala Harris has been for this last month, and it sort of culminated at the convention, is that she has taken the mantle now of the change candidate, even though she is the incumbent party. Now, is that going to continue? This is the job of a campaign. We've got 70 plus more.
She's taken the mantle of the change candidate. So she's the change candidate, is what they're telling you people, that she is the change candidate. Who is the change candidate in this election? 4 years? 28 years. Or 24 years. 28 years. Who represents this dynasty? Is it Kamala Harris or is it Donald Trump? She's the change candidate? It's crazy. Crazy. So a little bit about her economic policies. I have a few more minutes. I want to talk a little bit about her economic policies, the few policies that she's put out. We've been talking about it for the past couple of podcasts. $25,000 down payment assistance for undocumented illegals to buy homes. She says she's going to build 3 million more homes to increase the inventory, but it's not going to do anything if the homes are only going to go to all the illegals that she lets in. Ban on corporate gouging. So this is the one that has caused a big controversy, and that she's not taking any heat on because she won't sit down for the media to question her and to grill her on this policies. But many of her surrogates have been grilled on this economic policy right here. Elizabeth Warren was one of them. On CNBC, she gets cooked. Take a listen.
For 40 years, companies didn't know how to price gouge until 3.5 years ago when President Biden was elected. Where was the price gouging caught? We had 40-year highs in inflation. Where was the price? They just learned how to do this 3.5 years ago?
No, the difference is prices were not going up. And
this is, so these are, the same way that he's questioning Elizabeth Warren is the way Kamala Harris needs to be questioned on her own policies. Surrogates do not need to be out here answering these tough questions about her policies. She should be answering them herself, but she can't because she is a dingbat.
3.5 years ago?
No, the difference is prices were not going up. And as I said, prices started going up for a whole host of reasons.
A whole host of reasons why prices go up. I mean, people, what have we learned? That prices go up. The reason you have inflation is because you have more money. You have more money in circulation. More money makes prices go up. Inflation is money. Inflation is the inflation of the currency, of the money supply. But she says there's a whole host of reasons, and watch, she lists a bunch of reasons, but she don't list the creation of the new money that they created. If there's a whole host of reasons, I mean, the creation of new money has to be at least one of the hosts of reasons. But you have a whole host of reasons, and you don't even you don't even mention the trillions upon trillions of dollars that you guys created out of thin air.
The difference is prices were not going up. And as I said, prices started going up for a whole host of reasons. Prices went up because of the pandemic. Prices went up because of supply chain kinks. Prices went up because of the war in Ukraine. Prices were going up.
Yeah, prices going up because of the war in Ukraine, because of supply chain and all this stuff. It wasn't the $1 trillion that you created. Trillions upon trillions that you guys created. And even Larry Summers says the least responsible economic policy in 40 years, talking about the American Rescue, the $1.9 trillion that you created. That don't have anything to do with the inflation. And you want to control grocery stores that have 2% margins. He even tells her, I want you to listen to this.
The difference is when they started going up sharply and people noticed, that companies, some companies,
no, he's saying no.
And said, we could raise our prices just passing along costs. That's what you do in a competitive market.
This is not
but
widespread,
some companies,
Senator. This is not widespread.
I let you finish. In some.
So you see how she's getting grilled. Kamala Harris is the one who needs to be sitting here getting grilled like that.
The example you use for Kraft,
the
example you use for Kraft is totally fallacious. It's totally fallacious. You throw the numbers.
And you just want to keep talking.
Yeah, see, Kamala Harris cannot handle being questioned like this. This is why she's not doing interviews. This is why she's not doing press conferences. She cannot handle this type of heat, and she needs to be the one answering these questions, not her surrogates. Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, last week, she was on Meet the Press getting grilled over Kamala Harris's policies. Where's Kamala Harris? Why isn't Kamala Harris on this show getting grilled by Kristen Welker and asked tough questions like this? But no, her surrogates are out there in front of the media answering questions about her policies, taking tough questions about her policies because she's incapable of answering questions and defending her policies. Listen.
Let's delve into some of the policies the vice president laid out, some of her economic policies this week. Among other things, she's proposing a ban on price gouging. Here is what Obama administration economist Jason Furman had to say. He said, quote, "This is not sensible policy." And I think the biggest hope is it ends up being a lot of rhetoric and not reality. There's no upside here, and there is some downside. He warned effectively that price controls could ultimately stifle economic growth. So do you think that's the best way to bring down prices in Michigan?
Well, I think people are reading too much into what has been put out there. We know that Kamala Harris is going to be focused on building up more affordable housing. We know that Kamala Harris has already delivered on making sure that health care is more accessible and affordable for Americans and will protect Obamacare. That's 1 million people who have health care in Michigan right now
transitioning
that
to
Donald Trump's been trying to rip away. That only adds costs onto people's backs. And so that's why I think this opportunity economy that Vice President Harris is talking about.
No. The question, Gretchen, was, do you think that price controls are the way to grow the economy in Michigan? Why don't you answer that?
Strokes for her, I think, shows we really do. She sees every American. She understands what people are struggling with and wants to help you keep more money in your pocket. The biggest part of our personal budgets go toward housing, go toward health care, go toward the fundamentals. And she's got a plan on all those fronts to help more Americans be able to get a path to prosperity.
Well, Governor, I hear you saying that folks are reading too much into it, and yet it is what the vice president is proposing. You have former President Trump calling the policies communist. The Washington Post editorial board called it a gimmick. Is this plan to ban price gouging anything more than a gimmick, Governor?
I think it speaks to Kamala Harris's values, that she wants consumers to keep more money in their pockets. She wants hardworking Americans to be able to get ahead.
Yeah, I want her to be sitting where you are answering these questions. She should be there answering the question, not you, Gretchen. This was CNN's criticisms of her price gouging, price fixing. Take a listen.
Catherine, I read your piece and I heard you just mention it. The federal ban on price gouging for groceries. You are skeptical of this. Why?
Well, first of all, nobody can explain what price gouging means. It's like that old line about pornography. I know it when I see it, in the sense that what does it mean to have an excessive price or an excessive profit margin? That seems to be shorthand for a price or a profit margin that bugs me. That seems too high. So it's very hard to pin down 2%. What this would actually mean. If you look at the legislation that, as I mentioned, is already in the Senate, led by Senator Warren and Senator Bob Casey and a slew of others, the particular way that this is written, which is likely to be the template for any proposal that Harris would eventually embrace, is especially bad in that it just bans excessive prices, grossly excessive profit margins, and says that the Federal Trade Commission can use any metric it deems appropriate
to
decide what that would mean. which basically says, like, it's not going to be markets, it's not going to be supply and demand that's determining how much your grocery store charges you for
Kamala Harris
milk or for eggs. It's going to be some bureaucrat in D.C., which seems like totally unworkable, first of all, for the FTC to be deciding like how much Kroger charges for eggs in Michigan. But it also would be very bad for markets. We've seen this kind of thing tried in lots of other countries before: Venezuela, Argentina, the Soviet Union, etc. It leads to shortages.
Venezuela, Argentina, the Soviet Union, etc. And Kamala Harris should be the one answering these questions about her policy. Guys, we'll be back on Friday. I have a lot to share with you guys still that I didn't even crack the surface with in this podcast. But we'll get back into it on Friday. I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you on Friday.